Stream audio check. One, two, three, four.
Good evening. My name is Cameron Sanchez with KJZZ. I will be the moderator for this evening's debate. The Citizens Clean Elections Commission is the sponsor of this event, and as the state's voter education agency, Clean Elections is the official sponsor of Arizona debates, so voters have the opportunity to hear directly from the candidates, ask questions on the issues that matter the most to them, and vote informed. All registered voters can vote in the general election, which will be held on November 5th. The voter registration deadline is October 7th, and early voting begins today, which is October 9th. Yeah, it is. Voters are watching this debate live. You can submit a question at any time by email at debates@kc-a.com, text 408-840-8350, or call 480-937-1253. We may not get to all of the audience questions, but we're going to do our best. Tonight, we're going to hear from candidates in Legislative District 29, which covers Whitman and Surprise. We will kick off by debating for an hour, and we'll conclude around 7 p.m. Only the candidates currently debating will appear with their cameras and microphones on. Candidates, you will have 1 minute for your opening and closing statements and 1 to 2 minutes for your responses to voter questions. We encourage an open exchange of dialogue between opponents. If you feel the need to respond to any other candidates' comments after they conclude speaking, you may do so, and I may limit responses for time management purposes, and we remind the candidates and the audience that this is a respectful, courteous, and professional environment. Our goal tonight is to connect candidates and voters so that the electorate can vote informed. So our candidate running for the state Senate is Democrat Eric Stafford. Republican Senator Janae Shamp was invited to participate but did not respond. In the House, voters get to vote for 2 candidates. Your candidates here tonight are Democrat Thomas Tzura and Democrat Irie Ochoa Martinez. Republican Representative Steve Montenegro was invited to participate, but he declined, and candidate James Taylor did not respond. So let's bring in these candidates. Mr. Stafford, you're going to start us off with opening remarks, and I'll note that Ms. Ochoa Martinez is going to be joining us just a little bit later.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Eric Stafford. I'm running for state senate in our LD29 out of 30. LD29 is comprised of North Goodyear, Litchfield, Sun City, West, Whitman, El Mirage, and Litchfield Park, I believe. Yeah, and I'm running to represent young people. We do not have a lot of people my age that feel empowered to, or feel like they can make a difference in politics. In a lot of my life, I've felt kind of hopeless when looking at the political arena. And this has been my journey to kind of become hopeful and see that there is a path forward. Some of my top issues are when I started school in elementary school, I remember us being 48th in the state for school funding, and now we are 51st behind a territory. Another one is at this current rate, even with working in aviation maintenance and machining, it never felt like I would be able to buy my own home here, let alone make ends meet and be able to rent a single place for a single person. And so I definitely want to fight to just make things more reasonable and more survivable for normal everyday people. And to be a candidate who is just your run-of-the-mill person who doesn't have a lot of money, who all I have is free time and my energy, and I'm here to represent, here to do what I can.
All right, thank you so much. And now Mr. Tzura.
Yes, good evening, Cameron, and ladies and gentlemen. My name is Tom Tzura, running for state representative. Come from Chicago, and was born in Chicago, went to school in Chicago, public schools, public university, went into the Navy, spent 22 years in the Navy. In my life, I've been all over the world, living in several different countries, done a lot, owned my own businesses. So I've got a lot of experience under my belt. The strongest attribute I have is leadership, and that's one thing that I believe that we need in the legislature. We do not have the leadership that we need for everybody in the state. I am for the people, not for not for a party, Democrat or Republican. I am for everybody. And one of the things that I want to emphasize tonight is my issues. First issue that I have that I'd like to put forward is the nonpartisan primaries and ranked choice voting. I am pushing that. I hope that you will vote yes on the 140 ballot. And the other thing is women's unconditional right to choose. This will be ballot number 139. I hope you'll vote yes with me on that. And the other ballots, I hope that are not the ballots, the other propositions, I hope you will read all the information for and against. Please pay particular attention to the ACLU and Women's Voters League of Arizona. They have good inputs, and I hope that you'll read it and do your homework before you take the vote.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ms. Ochoa Martinez, are you available to speak yet? All right, then I'm gonna have us jump into the first question. I actually don't normally think I ask about ranked choice voting, but I'm gonna go back to you really quick, Mr. Tedzora, and ask you a little bit more about that. There are a lot of Republicans and a lot of Democrats who are against changing the way that we run our primaries now. Could you say just a little bit about your thoughts on that?
Yeah, knocking on doors, all the doors that I've knocked on, I've talked to people, both Democrat and Republican, young and old, and they all agree with me. It's like the two-party system is dead. It is ineffective, and we need to change it. In 2022, I made a short stint as a write-in candidate for Congress here in LD29, and one of the things I was pushing was ranked choice voting and nonpartisan primaries. And biggest thing about it is it opens the field to everybody, levels the playing field for Republicans, Democrats, and independents, allows independents to get into the game. We need more voice. We need more ideas. And with that, a lot of people have apathy. They don't want to vote because they're not interested in either Democratic or the Republican Party. With nonpartisan primaries, I think we can get a lot more people interested. And as I said, we have more variety. And once we have the primary election, legislature is going to be able to determine how many go on to the general. And once in the general, we should be doing ranked choice voting. And there are a number of ways that we can do that. And it's up to us how to do it and how we're going to vote for it in the legislature.
All right. Thank you very much. Mr. Stafford, same question to you.
Yeah, to bounce some extra stuff off of what Tom was saying, I believe in our district and in Arizona, a third of voters are now independent voters. And I was an independent voter before I decided to run for office. Unfortunately, you can't be a precinct committeeman as an independent. And if you run as a clean candidate or otherwise on the independent ticket, you are needing to get up to 6 times as many signatures. It's just not viable. And yeah, so I am a really big fan of people not needing to pick one of the two parties to be able to participate as independents, especially now that they're a huge percentage of the electorate. Yeah, I think it's a great thing voting reform is one of my biggest issues, but not one I typically bring to at the doors. But I think that we need to do everything in our power to make voting as easy and convenient as possible. A lot of people have full-time jobs. It's already a difficult thing to go out there and not get paid, not get compensated on your free time, if you have free time, to go fill out a ballot that this year is 4 pages long. It's very complicated. It's difficult to read. And a lot of the people, you don't even know who they are, especially if you're right there in person voting. It takes time to research a lot of these people. It's like 40 judges on there. So yeah, it helps me to see the value of having more open elections, and I want to see more dialogue amongst candidates and with people. Something wonderful that all 3 of us do as candidates in the West Valley. All 3 of our Democrats running, me, Tom, and Tanari, are all clean candidates, which means we don't take any money from any corporations, businesses. We are doing this in our free time to do something right by people, and we don't aim to profit from this. We aim to help. Yeah, and so you see us putting up our own signs. You see us knocking our own doors. You do not see that with the opposition. We are out here as ourselves every single day doing this hard work. Yeah.
Thank you very much, and welcome. Thank you for joining us, Sojo Martinez. The question is, do you support changing our partisan primary system to one that allows for open primaries?
Thank you, Cameron. You know, it's not really an issue that has come up a lot in, I've been in the political landscape for over a decade here in Arizona. And with so many other issues that our country is currently facing, I really haven't gotten that from voters yet. I think that we already have a good option for independents to participate and, you know, to support a certain candidate. You know, it would have to become a three-party system in the United States, and I think that would most likely have a decision coming from the federal government. I'm not sure how much the state will be able to dictate that, but I would support it definitely. I think that as many options as we can see, and we had neighboring countries do it, right? Moving from a two-party system to a 3 or 4 different parties joining the political landscape, whether it's be generals or primaries. So I think that there will be a pipeline to do it. I think that we can get best practices on the best way to do it. I'm just not sure how ready our country is in terms of the timeline when that would happen.
All right, thank you very much. Let's talk about abortion, one of those big issues this year. Do you support putting any restrictions on a person's decision to get an abortion? Mr. Stafford, let's start with you this time.
Yeah, to answer that question, I think I can answer for all three of us that we are all in support of women having full freedom over their reproductive rights. Yeah, just as a starter, it sets a horrible precedent for further things in the future as far as our medical freedoms go. And another thing that you don't hear a lot from people talking about this issue, this isn't just a women's issue. This is every single member of the family. And a lot of times there are multiple people in a relationship or making that decision to have a child. And it's taking that voice away from both parents. And so it's a horrible travesty that this has gotten where it is. And I urge more than just women to stand up for this. I know a lot of people who are past the age of having kids and they say it's not their problem anymore. And I think it's all of our problems. We want everyone to have a quality life and be able to afford things and make the decisions on their own time. And forcing people to have birth is just, it's not American and it's not healthy for our democracy or for our communities. And I prefer it the way it was, where people got to make their own choices as a family and as doctors and patients. That's all.
Thank you. Mr. Titsura, he may have answered for you, but same question to you.
Yeah, he put a lot on the table that I agree with. The one thing, again, that I need to emphasize, Proposition 139 has some limits to it, and I'm for unconditional. In other words, it is totally up to the woman. And no matter what time in the pregnancy she has it, I mean, we've already seen it, reports where women have problems in their eighth month, 7th month, and yet they still have to go through some kind of wickets in order to have the abortion. And I do not think that the medical field should be impacted by this. They should be doing what they need to do, and that is take care of the woman. And the only other thing I have to say is just think about what our freedoms are based on. The one phrase, we have the right to life, liberty, and freedom from persecution. So, women are included. I can't think of anything that men have to deal with in where the government would take away their rights, but here we need to give the women their full rights. They have to be identified, okay, as people. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Ms. Ochoa Martinez, your thoughts on abortion?
definitely should be a decision that has to go back to the people and to women. And as a woman myself, and with a daughter who's only 6 years old and a mom and a grandma, I think that it was a step backwards that this country did not to a while back ago, not too far long ago. And after everything that country has moved forward in regards to abortion and the rights to abortion and safe abortion, it needs to be a decision for that woman and for their families to make, and their, the other person involved along with them. And there's so many reasons why abortions happen. It's not an easy decision for anyone involved, but we do have to have that decision. I don't think the government should have a say whether or not. It's definitely the medical professionals. We're going to see what was happening before this was not a legal right for women, is that they were fleeing to different places to be able to have this, and created unsafe circumstances for them. So it's definitely something that I aligned with the Democratic Party values in regards to abortion.
Mr. Stafford?
Also wanted to make a point of, to our other constituents who are pro-life, I know there are many in our district, I want to encourage you all to, I want to let you guys know that we aren't just running on pro-choice platform. We all also want to see affordable childcare happen. We want to see other avenues that help to facilitate for adoptions, or to make it so that people can afford to actually have childcare, so they aren't forced to make that decision from a financial basis. And instead, we can then narrow it to more critical stuff. But at this current point, no movement is being made. So we need to be as open as possible to preserve people's rights and liberties. And that's exactly why we're taking this angle.
All right. Ms. Ochoa Martinez, we're going to go back to you on this one. There's been a lot of appetite at the state legislature to change public education funding and potentially raise teacher salaries. Is that something that you would support? What would you like to see done for public education?
I had the honor and pleasure to serve as a governing board member for the Alhambra Elementary School District from 2016 to 2020 for a full term. And I've always been a proponent of public education and teacher salaries and staff. And under my tenure as a board member, I did just that. I always advocated for public funding, for more funding to go into the public schools, and for better salaries for all educators, teachers, and staff involved. I think that we just need to be very fair, as we have different vouchers going on, like the ESSA voucher. I think that in order to create a better pathway, we just can't take away from our current public education system, because students will be suffering the consequences. And we need to develop a better system if we want to create more options, and how to do it in a more equitable way that won't affect our current public educators and our current students that are going to these public schools. Because the reality is that public schools have a lot more resources and benefits for children that are behind, reading specialists, additional resources for parents, not just educating, but also free and reduced lunch, right? Or breakfast in the classroom, where oftentimes these students is the only warm meal that they will eat during their week.
Thank you very much. Let's go back to you, Mr. Titsura. Same question on public education.
One point that tonight you just mentioned, where the students go to school to get a meal. There was something that candidate Waltz had said, that where they provided 2 meals at the school for the kids, and kids started showing up at school, and they started doing better because they had full stomachs. They were much better off. Now, going back to what we're going to do for the teachers, the ESA program has taken a lot of money out of the public education system. That would be one thing that we need to put back in there. I am for raising some taxes if we need to. I am also for repealing one of the articles that we have in the Constitution, which is I believe it's Article 25, right to work state. And with that, if we were able to repeal that, teachers would have collective bargaining power. They could create their own unions, and I am a union person. I believe in the unions, and the fact that the teachers don't get paid enough, if they had a union that had some clout, I believe that they would be able to press their own matters and be able to get what we need in education, which is more money to the teachers, especially the better teachers that would stick around. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Stafford.
Yeah, definitely seconding what Tom and Tanari mentioned. Mr. Walls running for, vice president. He got universal school lunches. There's no reason we can't do something like that. And I don't think that's a controversial policy at all. I have had so many times in elementary school being humiliated eating a peanut butter sandwich. I lived off of, we were a low income household, so I got a lot of that. And it was wonderful. It was the only nutrition outside of breakfast cereal that I grew up with. And so it was an absolute necessity for kids. Something else that I think of is I'm a byproduct of technical school, specifically the WestMech programs. I was just a high schooler who didn't know where I was going in my life. I was a little bit directionless. And thanks to these programs, I spent 3,000 hours becoming a certificated aviation maintenance technician. I became a machinist. I became a confident, skilled individual because of these things in fields that most people don't even know what they are. It is the foundation of the future of our country. When you think of like essential workers, it's the people who make your parts. It's the people who fix your automobiles. These things should be well-paying jobs, or teaching your kids. You should all be well-paid, sustainable jobs. And without these people, our world is not working anymore. They need to be absolutely valued. When I went into high school, my first year, freshman year, they were removing the automotive program. We used to have a garage at Millennium High School. I never got that opportunity. And a lot of older people I know, they grew up with mandatory home ec classes. They learned how to take care of a child, how to properly cook meals, how to hem and sew their own clothing, how to identify chemical bottles and safety equipment you need to wear for certain chemicals, or even how to put a drywall anchor in a wall or use a power drill. There's a lot of skills that I feel like we are just not prioritizing. And the school voucher program was a beautiful thing when it was helping children get to a school. Like if they're autistic and live in a rural area, it was very helpful for them to go get quality schooling if they didn't have resources. But now it's become such a bloated system that there is not adequate funding for the 94% of students that go to public school. And it's a travesty. It's bankrupting our entire budget. So education is the backbone of our country. We need educated people to make America great, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, thank you. Since you spoke a little bit about private school vouchers, also known as ESAs in Arizona, I want to give the other two candidates an opportunity to say something on that if they wish. Mr. Tetsura, would you like to speak at all to the ESA program?
Yeah, ESA program, the latest estimate is it's going to cost us about $700 million. That's a heck of a chunk out of the public school system funding. And there was a report just recently in the news that the money that's been doled out so far for this year, of all that money, $36 million still has not been spent on the tuition. Most of it is supposed to be spent on tuition. So what are these people doing with the $36 million that they haven't spent? Speculation is that they are holding it for college. They were putting it into a fund, which they're legally capable of doing, and they're going to put it into college. Now, where they're going to send their kids for college, I don't know. That money is supposed to be used for the school systems here in Arizona. The other thing that another report that I've read is the fact that all that money that was going to all the money that is going to the parents utilizing ESAs, some 80% of them were already in private schools. they didn't need that money, which totally blows my mind that they were able to afford it anyways. And now they're taking the money out of the public education system. So I am not for ESAs. I believe that we need to go to a investment program that should be started by the state, somewhat of a 401k thing where teachers can, or I'm sorry, parents can put money into their tuition and the school will provide them a certain percentage. And this would go on we start out at about providing them 25% of the tuition for their children's education the first year. Second year, break it down to about 15, and then 10% after the third year. And during that period of time, parents who want to send their kids to private schools or use ESAs, they can put into a escrow account which collects interest, and we would be matching, state would be matching it, but out of the general fund, not out of the public education fund.
All right. Thank you. I'm going to ask you to stop it there so that Ms. Ochoa Martinez has a chance to respond also. Anything you'd like to say on the ESA program?
Yes. So my answer has changed, in the last 4 years or so. It's a double-edged sword. So, I mean, as an example, I grew up poor. My dad earns $16 an hour, works construction. My brother, who resides with my parents, low income, they have a Habitat for Humanity home, it attends Brophy College Prep, and that's because of his rigorous academic achievements. He got a scholarship. Actually, he's not allowed to use ESSA vouchers because he's on a full ride on Brophy. Obviously, my parents can barely afford an $800 mortgage, let alone a private tuition at Brophy, right? So I feel that the rhetoric needs to be more geared towards actual data and where it's going and more restrictions, right? I feel that my brother that attends Brophy should have the right to access ESSA vouchers. And actually he can't because he's receiving other scholarships from Brophy that doesn't allow him to get a computer through the ESSA vouchers, right? There's military families that have to move around so much and they're going to homeschool that are using ESSA vouchers, right? So I think that it's not all negative. And I think there's a lot of stories of real families that, have children with disabilities, children with learning disabilities or with Down syndrome or physical disabilities, or students like my brother, right? That again is not like a very common situation, but it happens, right? That there's just highly achieving academic students that are on scholarship, are going to private schools, even though they're from low income families. So it's more of a question for me. How can we place more restrictions so it can be equitable, right? Maybe a Brophy student that attends and their parents are making over $200K a year shouldn't have ESSA vouchers. So is their income cutoff, right? We need to start looking at more restrictive income cutoff. If they're earning more than $250,000 a year, or I don't know, more than $150K a year, then they shouldn't be able to get into the ESSA vouchers. ESSA vouchers too, another downfall is that it's not very audited. For example, I've seen some families that use it and order things I wouldn't even imagine to qualify on Amazon, but they have so much liberty, like they're ordering Apple Watches off of these partnerships that they have through the ESSA vouchers and Apple products. An Apple Watch, how is that really relevant to education success, right? So I think it's just about reforming and changing the guidelines and being more restrictive and using it in a more conscious way, in a more equitable way, the current ESSAs, in a way that is not going to be impacting. I don't think public, and I said this earlier, I don't think that if we do remain with an ESSA voucher or a modification of ESSA, it shouldn't be removing from our public education system. That shouldn't be a question. That should be completely aside and separate from the funding that our public schools need to function.
All right. I'm going to get us off of education now, but thank you all so much.
Okay.
I can tell this is a topic that everybody cares about. Let's move on to housing though. Affordable housing is something that is lacking a little bit in Arizona. How would you like to help with that issue? What can we do to make housing affordability better for Arizonans and in your district in particular? Let's start off this time with Mr. Stafford.
So I think one major issue that we see out here is we have a lot of housing, especially in the far West Valley, that is built that isn't accommodating for things such as if we run out of water for our 100-year water supply, the first people in houses that are not protected from that are these temporary condominiums and these apartment complexes. They don't fall under that. And so, unfortunately, if we do start running out of water, all of these people who are new and are living in these more affordable, smaller housing areas, they won't have any water. So that's just a little aside, but I think a major thing that is going on statewide and nationwide is there is no limits or caps on the amount of private residential housing, single family homes that private corporations can buy. So you can have a company like Amazon come in or BlackRock buy a ton of our housing and artificially inflate the rental prices to make maximum profit. And that doesn't account for us as Arizonans having affordable housing, being able to survive, being able to pay our bills. There's nothing protecting us from being taken advantage of and having that scraped off the top. And so, yeah, I definitely want to put in place legislation that protects consumers like us, because we need to have permanent housing and we need to be able to expand our families. I'm still living in my family's home because I don't feel like I'm ever going to be able to afford a home, especially post-COVID. And we need to change that for everyone. That's all.
Thank you very much. Ms. Ochoa Martinez.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. It's our access to affordable housing. We really haven't done anything to facilitate it. In different neighborhoods across the valley, there's been an increase of homeless families and homeless folks on the streets, right? And even families having to move into their automobiles with children under the age of 10, just because it's the living wages is not parallel to the cost of living here in Arizona, unfortunately. And, like I mentioned, even with my parents who have been working for the last 35 years, if it wasn't for Habitat for Humanity having that option, I mean, they waited 35 years to become homeowners. They just became homeowners 3 years ago. But again, through the Habitat for Humanity that has a specific program to keep the mortgage payments with zero interest at an affordable rate, right? But unfortunately, Habitat can't service every single person, and they don't have the infrastructure or the funding to do that, right? So as the government, we have to ask ourselves, and as the people of Arizona, what are we able to do? How are we able to support institutions, stakeholders? We give so many tax credits and tax initiatives to big corporations that are like Cabela's and Glendale, right, that are coming in, Walmart. So why can't we give these similar initiatives to builders, contractors, to build multi-housing that can be affordable, even below the market rate? And persuading more of the landlords too with initiatives to sign into Section 8 housing. Section A housing has a really great program to allow families to have affordable rent and work with landlords. For example, if I own a rental home and the market rate for that rental home is $2,400, but a family can only afford $1,200, well, Section 8 housing will pay the difference to the landlord, right? You just have to agree as a landlord to be a Section 8 housing landlord, right? And accept families under Section 8 housing. So, I mean, but these they should be more common knowledge. What are we doing as a community to spread all this information, to have conversations with developers, contractors, and landlords to sign on to these programs, right? And to open the doors and opportunities for families to be able to have an affordable housing. So oftentimes it's also, unfortunately, language barriers, lack of knowledge or accessing resources. I mean, what are the cities and governments doing to spread this information in different languages and different ways? Not everyone is going to log into the City of Phoenix overwhelming page and look through every single tab to see what are the resources, right? So access to computers, right? Not everyone has access to internet. So what are we doing as a community and as a state and as a government to create more opportunities and create more access to affordable housing, but also signing on folks into the current programs that we already have?
All right, thank you. I'm gonna get to Mr. Tetsura now because we're already more than halfway through. Affordable housing.
Affordable housing. Okay, let's go with the cultural change out here in the Southwest. Let's go back to Chicago. Chicago, large city, 2 flats, 3 flats, 4 flats. You talk about affordable. Family could buy a house, have 2 flats or 3 flats, and they live on the first flat. They rent out second and the third flat. In some of those houses, you actually have 5 flats. And again, the owners live on the bigger flat and the other 4 are rented out. What does that do? That allows them to pay for their mortgage, puts money in their pocket, and keeps the money here. Our street economy grows. It doesn't go back to these large conglomerates that are building these large apartment complexes. When you pay your rent, it doesn't stay here. It goes to them wherever they are, somewhere else in the States. Now, we don't do that here in Arizona. We have single family homes. Somewhere along the line, we've got to start changing that. We got to make it so that people can afford a house, okay? As Eric had stated, one of the ways to do it is start building 2 flats and 3 flats. We have to zone areas instead of giving it to these large developers who are going to build single family homes for $500,000. Let them build a 2 flat, 3 flat where this can be rented out to the owners. And then the other dirty word is California. Here in Arizona, anyways, it's a dirty word. And California has rent control. If you had 2 flats and 3 flats, you can do that. I don't see doing rent control here unless you're in actually Phoenix, where you might have 2 flats or 3 flats or some apartment complexes. But that would be one way. It works in Chicago, works in San Francisco. In San Francisco, there's a lot of rent control. Got a friend who's in there, and he's got it, and it was a lifesaver for him. It's just something you got to think about. I'm not saying I can't think of any other way. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Perked my ears up because I'm born and raised in the Bay Area. Let's move on and talk about gun safety. So sadly, this is a topic that also comes up a lot at the Capitol, and it's a point of great contention. Are there any restrictions you would want to put on people being able to purchase firearms in Arizona? And let's start with Mr. Tetsura.
Yeah, first thing is outlaw ghost guns. As far as restrictions, don't care for the gun shows. I believe that we need universal background checks. There's a lot of common sense stuff that people can do. There's things they've done it in Illinois and in Chicago where you're supposed to have a lock on your gun in your house and stuff, and I just consider that ridiculous. I mean, people buy guns in order to protect themselves in their house, and that's up to them how they want to store it. But the one thing that we do need to consider is a halt to assault rifles, assault weapons, the purchase, the sales, the distribution. But as far as Arizona goes, I really can't think of anything that we could do in order to how would I say, make us safer. It's a cultural thing. I feel sorry for people who have the need that they have to walk around with a gun to protect themselves at all times. I see that. I once watched a family walk out of a home and garden show, and they had 9-year-olds, 11-year-old, and I think there was like about a 14 and a 15-year-old, and they were all strapping. And I just, what are you going to do? It's a cultural thing.
All right, thank you very much.
That's
And
all I have to say on it right now.
thank you. For anyone listening, I think ghost guns are like do it yourself, create your own gun at home versus purchasing it out at a store.
Right.
Mr. Stafford?
Yeah, so a lot of us out in this district, including myself, are firearm owners. I understand and recognize the fact that this helps a lot of people feel safe and comfortable in their homes. And it does offer you a tool that you can use to defend yourself. But I do think it should come with a level of responsibility that it warrants. Like, if you're going to have a firearm, it's nice to know that you have a license. You're adequately trained to use it safely. Your kids aren't going to somehow manage across it, take it to school, or hurt themselves or others with it. So yeah, I definitely support programs that help to educate people on firearm safety and also understand what guns do, because I think a lot of people treat them like toys or like props in a video game, and not the fact that they are killing machines and the weight of death and of pointing something like that at someone. But love a lot of Tom's points. Ghost guns, terrifying. Something that we face running for public office and that a lot of people face is a lot of public candidates, our addresses are readily available. And I find it to be a shocking and terrifying thing that someone who is unstable, who's having a bad day, a bad month, a bad year, can buy a gun without a background check, come to your house and shoot you when all you're trying to do is help your community. So it is a scary thing to know that we don't have a lot of safeguards and red flag laws to protect, like, for example, women who are victims of domestic violence, domestic abusers. Oftentimes, it ends in fatal stuff. So we want to make sure that people who are proven to be dangerous have, their ability to get a killing machine feels limited. That's all.
Thank you. Ms. Ochoa Martinez.
So we're a military household, so I should answer the question whether we are homeowners, gun owners or not. There are background checks already in place. Unfortunately, not every single store that sells guns follows the background checks, right? But legally, you need to have a background check. Maybe pawn shops don't do it, or I don't think we do a lot of auditing. But reputable places or businesses that are selling guns that follow the law do require and run a background check before having someone purchase it. I think for me, the most important questions in relations to gun control is the mental health. I think that our country is going through a mental health pandemic, and that we have not taken it to the serious level that we need to. And that impacts a lot how guns are being used. I mean, I recently met a veteran who wanted to commit suicide, and he's a gun owner, right? And what are the resources and places for veterans, for 13-year-olds who are thinking about having suicidal thoughts? It's oftentimes it's not just the gun itself. I also don't believe that someone needs a M13 or an automatic assault weapon in their household. Right. So how are we able to tighten up and actually know and make sure that every single business or entity that is selling these guns are following the law and actually running background checks and have it registered? Maybe you have communication, right? To whether they've just been hospitalized for suicidal ideations, but that would be violating HIPAA. There's just so many ways that we're able to create these solutions, but it might create like a blur line with the personal privacy as well. So it definitely needs to be a lot safer. And the other thing that I'm thinking, growing up, I remember the schools became responsible for talking about drugs. And we even had like this drug character come out and talking about how drugs are bad. There's being a no drug zone. So, I mean, let's talk about guns too. Let's talk about gun safety, because the reality is whether we completely ban them or not, they're going to exist. I mean, drugs are not legal, and they still exist, and they're still killing so many children and youth in elementary school that have access to drugs. So I think raising more resources and education about gun safety and what is a gun, and for parents to be responsible gun owners too, and have conversations and set boundaries to families. But I think at the end of the day, when we're having a conversation about guns, we also have to have a conversation about mental health.
Thank you. I saw Mr. Tesoro, I think you raised your hand for a moment. Would you like to respond briefly?
Yeah, I just wanted to elaborate a little more. When you kind of got me off, surprised me with the question before, but when I said culture, one of the things we need to start interjecting that the use of guns, as Tonighty just mentioned, educate, talk about it, just like we talk with drugs. I think we need to have that conversation. Tonighty's right. And the other thing, when we talk about culture, I forgot when it was, a number of years ago, we used to have a buyback program. I believe Phoenix had a buyback program on guns, and the state legislatures shut that down. We need to bring that back. We need to change the culture in a way that it's okay not to have a gun. Give that gun up. The other thing that if you read the reports, that when those places that have buyback programs, the guns are supposed to be destroyed. All they do is take those guns apart, and then they sell the parts. So it goes back onto the streets. If we do have a buyback program, we need to make sure that every part of the gun is destroyed.
All right, thank you very much. Let's talk about water. I want to make sure we get at least two questions in before we end here. So water is an important resource here in Arizona. It's one people are increasingly concerned about each election cycle. What should we be doing to protect our water and to make sure that we have a secure water supply? Ms. Ochoa Martinez.
It's even hard to comprehend how water can be a partisan issue. I think we all as humans, and even our environment, needs access to water and clean water. We're lucky that I think the majority of Arizonans have not, and I think that's why it hasn't become like such an urgent issue for a lot of voters, that we still haven't had a huge impact, right? In our district, there's been some restrictions oftentimes throughout the year, but not too much that it will intervene with your life, that stops you and says, what, we need to start. We need to have conversations with this. I think that as a government, we just need to do the best to be able to have water for long term. And I'm thinking my children, right, and generations to come, that are going to be facing this issue at a greater scale that we are facing right now. So being able to collaborate with our neighboring states and have more conscious choice with water. I remember a couple of years back, I would see commercials about, if you're brushing your teeth, make sure you shut off your the water as you're brushing, right? Because sometimes people have the tendency to leave it on. We love camping and we have an RV, so we've become a lot more conscious about water. It may sound how are you pointing that out? But sometimes, I would love to take my 20-minute showers, but I learned that a 5-minute shower does almost the same thing, right? So just raising awareness of how are we able to take care of our water, and being able to, use it consciously, and also having a good plan as a state for our water reserves and how we're distributing water across the state, and not just certain regions, but everyone, including rural.
Thank you. Mr. Stafford.
Yeah, so something we definitely see a lot here is Arizona, 70% of Arizona's land is completely unregulated. So anyone can drill a well and just pump unlimited water. That's wonderful for people who take advantage of that, but it's really rough because we're supposed to be cohabitating with other species, the natural infrastructure such as aquifers, and other things such as riparian life, which is the life that grows around our native bodies of water like rivers. That is all infrastructure built into the earth that's happened forever. And us over exploiting our water is destroying the integrity of aquifers and making them collapse. That can't be fixed. It damages the plant life permanently. And it further exasperates the climate issue that we're dealing with by harming our native wildlife. Another point that people don't talk about and isn't direct, it is directly related. We are overdeveloping in the greater Phoenix area. We have too much concrete, uncovered concrete. We've become a giant heat sink where all the sun just beats down in this concrete. It gets excessively hot and it creates an updraft of hot air, which prevents rain from reaching here. It pushes the clouds away from the greater Phoenix area. We're not doing enough infrastructure that is sustainable, that takes advantage of the sun, and that is environmentally conscious towards that regard. Yeah, and also recycling our water, using that gray water and cleaning it and making it so we can use it indefinitely. Y'all ever seen Dune? We need to be able to use our water a little bit wiser.
I have seen Dune. Mr. Tetsura.
Yeah, I've got a lot to say on this. Let's start with the fact that conservation is great, but you got to consider global warming right now, how climate change is starting to affect us greatly. Think about the last summer and this summer that we've had. Think about the rivers. Mississippi, one of them, the rivers in Europe that dried up. Mississippi came down to a bottleneck and stalled a lot of the shipping going down through the Mississippi. I believe this is only going to get worse with the global warming. We've had atmospheric rivers that went through California, Utah, and here we stay dry. Unless nature changes or reverses itself, we're not going to get any water. The last time I heard any reports, water is going to continue moving north. And it's just the cycle that we go through, the earth goes through. And when you look at Lake Mead, Lake Powell, they're very low. This wasn't it this year. We just had to give back some water because of our treaty or our contracts with the other states. Federal government told us we had to give water back. And, let's remember that Colorado used to run all the way down in Mexico. Doesn't do that anymore. We're using a lot of it up. I've tried to research and find out how much groundwater do we actually have here in Arizona? How many aquifers do we have? Where do we pull this water out of? And I can't find an answer on the internet. It concerns me. We are running low on water. And what we need to do, I believe we need to start engineering assessments for, getting water from Mexico, Gulf of Mexico, or from California. And we also need to start thinking about engineering assessments to what I call piping system. This was brought up by a Canadian out in Yuma when I watched Tim Dunn during they had a session out there. They were asking people, what are we going to do about water? And Canadians stepped up and said, why don't you just go ahead and build pipelines and bring the water down from Canada? We can do that.
I love water policy.
It's
and I know
not a
exactly what you're
far-fetched.
talking about, but I have to stop you there because it's the 11th hour.
Thank you.
And we have one question coming in live and I want us to get to it. We're going to do this exercise where I'm going to ask you guys to answer in like 25 seconds.
Okay.
How do you differ from your opponents who are not here tonight? Let's start with Mr. Stafford.
All right, speed round. I ran because of my opponent, because if we had a normal Republican, I wouldn't have to run. I'm running against someone who is anti-vax, who was at the January 6th insurrection, who tried to pass legislation to protect candidates who are guilty of insurrection. Yeah, this is as extreme as it comes, and I would not be here if it wasn't because I'm afraid for the future of our state, and we need to get rid of candidates who are extreme. We need to find a middle ground. That's all.
Thank you. Ms. Ochoa Martinez, something that differentiates you from your opponent?
I'm the only woman on the legislative ballot out of all 4 candidates. I'm the one with the most background in policy and policy making. I have a strong education background, including undergrad and master's, and I'm a current doctoral student working on my dissertation in economic development. And I have been actively involved in community for 20 years, not only as a policymaker or a stakeholder within policymaking, and a researcher, but also as a grassroots organizer and helping the community and issues, serving on commission boards, serving on governing board members, serving in different aspects that involve the community. Both my husband and my kids and I have always been very active in the community, and we're deeply rooted in Arizona and our district. And I think because of my strong both education and professional background and everything that I've done for this state until this day positions me to be a very effective policymaker for the state of Arizona.
Thank you. Mr. Titsura.
Leadership, stability. I am for all the people of Arizona, not just a party. And I'm not part of the Freedom Caucus. Their name is Freedom Caucus, and they are anything but free. All they want to do is take away our rights, and they want to support outside corporations. They don't care about the people here.
All right, thank you. Now it's time for our closing statements. Let's do this starting off with Ms. Ochoa Martinez, yes, let's start that way.
Thank you, Cameron. I'm looking forward to have the opportunity to serve the constituents of LD29 and to join the legislators in Arizona. It has never been my intention to be a politician, but rather be a policymaker that affects positive changes into not only our community, but our state. We're in a very trial times as a nation and as a state. And as a Latina, as a person that grew up low income, that went on scholarship for all her education programs, undergrad, master's, and even PhD. And as a researcher that have conducted data not only in policies and policies affecting Arizona, I feel very confident in what we can do as an elected official. And again, I'm not interested in becoming a long-term politician, but just being an effective policymaker and work along with everyone to serve the residents of our district and the state of Arizona. Not only am I and differences of being the only woman candidate for our district, but also the one with the military background. And yes, my husband is the one that serves, but everyone in the military knows that the spouses have to play a big role in the children as well. And I've been very active in our veteran and military communities. As a military spouse, I've always, we're very active and serving in different aspects with our military community as well. And I feel that all the background and my knowledge and who we are as a family, because it is something that, it will take the whole village if I have the honor to be elected to serve that. It's we're bringing all of this, but most importantly, the passion for serving and serving others is something that I've been doing for over 20 years, and it's not going to stop or end in this election.
Thank you very much. Mr. Titsura, closing statement.
Ladies and gentlemen, and especially the independents in our district, make sure that you vote. Please vote. We need you in there. Read your packets, find out what the issues are, what the ballots are, what the propositions are. Read the for and against, and please go ahead and vote yes on Prop 140 and Prop 139. And no matter what happens, remember, if you don't vote, it's democracy. Use it or lose it. You can't be totally apathetic. We need everybody to vote. We need you to vote logically and for the people of the state of Arizona. So I'm asking you to vote Democratic. Let's bring some change into the legislature and into the state. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Stafford.
Yeah, so this is all 3 of our first years running for office. We have grown so much in this time, and we are going to continue to grow every single day. I aim to continue to work in this field and continue to learn as much as I can to represent everybody on all sides of the political spectrum. This is about Americans and making progress towards us having more rights and us having an easier life. And so don't let all the little squabbles and political drama get in the way of that. As Mr. Titsura mentioned, a lot of these ballot measures are wild. One of them is trying to take away your right to vote for judges permanently. I urge you to, even if you don't like voting for politicians, check out the ballot measures, do your homework, and I hope that we can count on your vote. And I hope that when you do vote for us, you will be very pleasantly surprised by how much good work we do in these next 2 years. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. This concludes our debate. To our candidates, we thank you so much for participating. And to the voters, we thank all of you who took the time to watch the debate and inform yourselves before the November 5th general election. We encourage you to visit azcleanelections.gov for official, accurate voting information.